Hey there, friends. My name's Jim, and today I'd like to talk about Dark Winter. This was Joe Biden yesterday, and he wanted to give us all a nice warning about what he perceives to be on the way. Now, before I play this, I'd like to remind you that viruses tend to, not always, but tend to mutate to be less deadly as they move on. Because if you have an organism if you have a disease that is more likely to kill the host doesn't have as much of a chance to spread the pathogen around, and the evolutionary pressures that make the disease kind of want to keep on living and keep propagating its species, as is the point of all living beings in nature. So generally, it will continue to be more virulent, meaning it will, more contagious. So it will go to more people around the world, but it'll be less deadly, less hospitalizations, and less severe overall. That's what the doctors from South Africa are saying. So far, as of today, there has been a total of one person confirmed to have died of Omicron in the entire world. And that's with tons of people saying, Omicron's coming, we're all gonna, die. So, with that as context, let's see what Joe Biden has to let us know, because he's such a caring gentleman.
But it's here now, and it's spreading, and it's going to increase. For unvaccinated, we are looking at a winter of severe illness and death for unvaccinated. For themselves, their families, and the hospitals they'll soon overwhelm. But
So, in this, Joe Biden is pushing, obviously, that the disease is going to continue to go around, and we're going to continue to have to worry about overwhelming hospital services. If you remember, that was the initial reason for the 15 days to stop the spread. I know this is going way back, but prior to all of this craziness starting, pretty much everybody acknowledged that we would all get COVID at some point. The issue was the exponential curve of all the people getting sick at once and overwhelming the hospital system. That's what most people were worried about, which is what 15 days to stop the spread was about, making sure that people didn't continuously infect each other, and to spread out the infection over a longer period of time to keep that curve less radical. That was the entire point. Now, as time has gone on, most countries have gone to a policy of COVID zero, as in, until we have completely eradicated COVID, we're not done fighting it. It's a war on disease at this point. But specifically what I want to talk about is a phrase that has popped up a couple times called when Joe Biden or Anthony Fauci have used the phrase dark winter. I'll give you a couple of examples here. This was on the Takeout podcast with Dr. Anthony Fauci. Let's take a little listen and just hear what he has to say.
Now have, even with the Delta variant, the vaccines that we have are highly effective and safe. Yet we still have about 70 million people in this country who are eligible for vaccination who have not yet been vaccinated. Some have reasons that when you speak to them and answer their questions, they'll change their mind. Others, for reasons that appear to be ideological and perhaps political, just don't want to get vaccinated. There's no room for that when you're dealing with a public health crisis. So if you're asking me, are we going to have a dark winter? If we don't get the people vaccinated who need to be vaccinated, and we get that conflating with an influenza season, we could have a dark, bad winter. But we could also avoid a dark, bad winter if we get people vaccinated to a very high degree over the next several weeks to a month or two.
So, obviously, that's Dr. Anthony Fauci looking out for the best of us. He's a very moral man, Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's a very, very good moral man. And I'd recommend this book, The Real Anthony Fauci. It really shows how wonderful of a man he is. Anyways, he used the phrase dark winter there, and obviously for most people you'll see that and you'll say, dark winter, that sounds a little ominous, like video gamey, but he could have just meant dark winter as in it's going to be a bad winter. A lot of people are going to get sick. Clearly that's what he was intimating. But I would like to focus in on specifically the phrase dark winter and other phrases that get used often like this, and you'll see where I'm going. But for just to give you more context, let's see our dear old dad Biden have his say. Here you go.
We all agreed that we want to get the economy back on track. We need our workers to be back on the job by getting the virus under control. We're going in a very dark winter. Things are going to get much tougher before they get easier.
Okay, the majority of the rest of the video isn't that important. It was just him calling out Trump at the beginning of his, presidency, saying that he needs to transfer power better, or else we could have a very dark winter. Again, using that same phrase, the same phraseology that seems to spread around a lot with these groups, these elite groups, similar to Build Back Better. I mean, you may think that the Build Back Better bill, as is actually right back behind here, this was before the bill existed. Build Back Better was just the phrase that was being used. Now, a lot of politicians parrot phrases throughout the country, but when you see something happening internationally, that's when you'd actually like to take a look. So, for instance, Build Back Better, just another little example. Here you go.
It's a very pertinent question to ask, how do we build back better?
To build back better or whatever.
We have a chance to reset the clock and build back better than before.
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Joe Biden calls it Build Back Better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
To do things differently. To build back better.
We're going to build it back better.
And build it back better.
It's my plan to build back better.
Start taking all the problems that have been
Of course,
created in
our delightful,
and start to
the
build
clear,
back
intelligent Bill
in a
Gates
positive
to
way.
help us out.
I have launched a booklet called Build Back Better, Britain After Coronavirus.
It's about building this country back better.
Growing conspiracy following it.
Ooh.
It is called the Great
Conspiracy
Reset.
theories, you wanna
Unprecedented
Great Reset,
opportunity
that's a
to
conspiracy.
rethink and reset the ways in which we live.
The great opportunity for reset.
The theory even calls Mr. Biden's campaign slogan, Build Back Better, a front for the conspiracy.
It's crazy. Why would you think that? That seems completely out of the realm of possibility.
Build back better.
Build back better.
All elements of the Great Reset are fundamental
Aye.
to building the future we
Disappointing.
This pandemic has provided an
Now
opportunity
this one.
for a reset.
It's a big effort to, some would say, to build back better. We would say to really have a great reset.
Conspiracy, conspiracy.
So, credit to, who is this? Sergeant Rock 007. I gotta say, beautiful compilation. I like the music and the context there. But the important thing to note about this is that this is being orchestrated. Phrases like this don't just pop out of nowhere. These kind of things, when politicians say them, when this many different groups of incredibly powerful people say them, these have been focus tested. There have been groups of people who were sat in a room while people rattled off a list of, making America good. No, wait, can't do that. How about let's do I don't know, building the schools and infrastructure. That doesn't really ring off the tongue. How about build back better? Build back better. 3 Bs. When it's orchestrated like that, that is what is happening. And these people saw that build back better. I guess whatever reason they think it was the best phrasing. Maybe they aren't very good at their jobs. I'd try something a little bit more catchy, but whatever. Regardless, the important point is that they do orchestrate these kinds of messages, and they use them internationally. With that said, let's take a step back, maybe a couple decades to 9/11. Pre 9/11, there were actually training exercises that were done. This was released from the 9/11 Commission's files, and of course, a ton of people have forgotten about it by this point because why remember something like that? But there were all these different exercises that were done just prior to 9/11. Well, from 4 years to 3 days prior to 9/11, there were a series of different exercises done in which a hijacked aircraft would fly into New York to maybe fly into a building or crash into Times Square, And in a couple of them, for instance, the one that happened on 9/6, 2001, was a war game where the idea was a bunch of terrorists captured an airliner. They had taken over and they were flying it into New York to fly it into a building. They were diverted in that case, and they were shot down, or maybe it was they plowed themselves in the field. Either way, that was the exercise right before 9/11 happened. Now, you could say this is a coincidence, but there's a pattern of these things that happen where the military just happens to be doing some training exercise on exactly what the next big problem is. This may start to bring together a little bit of what I'm talking about here, because this was called Operation Vigilant Guardian. So all these things have names. Now, there was another operation that was done in 2001 under the Bush administration, and it was called Operation Dark Winter. Operation Dark Winter was a... Let me just read it for you. Operation Dark Winter was the code name for a senior-level bioterrorist attack simulation conducted on June 22nd to 23rd, 2001. It was designed to carry out a mock version of a covert and widespread smallpox attack on the United States. So, this was a real thing. The government got together, and they call it gaming these things. They have war games, and this is, as called by Bill Gates recently, germ games, when you basically role play the idea of what would happen in a scenario where there was a great pandemic. In this they chose smallpox attack. A couple of smallpox attacks simultaneously happening in the United States, and they wanted to see how they would handle it. As this article says from the foreignpolicy.com, it didn't end well. Basically, the idea is that these were stress tests for the government, and they knew they were going to fail immensely. They were just curious about how stressed they could stress the system before it began to break, where our buckles are, where it would break, and how to maybe shore up some of those systems. But the point was to break the system down, and they found the best way to do that was with a pandemic scenario. So, Dark Winter was their operation where smallpox was spread all across the world and caused this large, massive deaths. And they played it out as in what the media would say, how the governments would react, what would happen. There was an idea about China invading Taiwan during this, I believe. Now, let me just read a little bit of this to you. This is from foreignpolicy.com by Mark Perry, a senior analyst at the Kinsey Institute for Responsible Statecraft. On June 22, 2001, a group of well-known U.S. officials and a handful of senior policymakers gathered at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland for a senior-level exercise that simulated a biological weapons attack, an outbreak of deadly smallpox on the United States. Designed by the Johns Hopkins Center for Civilian Biodefense Struggles, now called the Center for Health Security, and the Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies. The day-and-a-half-long Dark Winter simulation was conducted to gauge how senior leaders would respond to such an attack, and included such high-level participants as Senator Sam Nunn, who played the president, former White House advisor David Gergen, the National Security Advisor, or who played the National Security Advisor, and retired career diplomat Frank Wisner, who played the Secretary of State. But Dark Winter has since become legendary in senior policy-making circles in Washington for a different reason. It has regularly been cited by its designers and participants as the clearest exhibit of the spiraling stresses and potential social collapse that could be sparked by a public health crisis. Now, obviously this article goes into Dark Winter is definitely not the COVID-19, don't worry, these things aren't connected. I'm not saying that they are. What I am saying is this was from 2001, and they wanted to update this idea. They wanted to try it again, see how much better we did. It's been 2 decades. We got more technology. We're smarter. We can contact trace. How would we deal with this now? That was called Event 201. Event 201 was basically the child of Dark Winter. It was a remix of it. It's pretty interesting how this particular tabletop exercise went and what the specific examples of their exercise was. So, let's see what this says. Event 201 was a 3.5-hour pandemic tabletop exercise that simulated a series of dramatic, scenario-based facilitated discussions confronting difficult, true-to-life dilemmas associated with response to a hypothetical, but scientifically plausible, pandemic. 15 global business, government, and public health leaders were players in the simulation exercise that highlighted unresolved real-world policy and economic issues that could be solved with sufficient political will, financial investment, and attention now and in the future. The exercise consisted of pre-recorded news broadcasts, live staff briefings, and moderate discussions on specific topics. These issues were carefully designed in a compelling narrative that educated the participants in the audience. The Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, World Economic Forum, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation jointly proposed these recommendations, which is their summary of what they got from this plan and what they think should be done to alleviate these concerns in the future. Now, what's particularly interesting about this scenario, which obviously they put it on a different page, well, the idea of the scenario was that it was a coronavirus that came from bats and got into the population and then started spreading across the world. Here, let me let them say it. Maybe my words don't quite work. In recent years, the world has seen a growing number of epidemic events, amounting to approximately 200 events annually. These events are increasing, and they're disruptive to health, economies, and society. Managing these events already strains global capacity, even absent a pandemic threat. Remember, this is prior to COVID-19. Experts agree that it's only a matter of time before one of these epidemics becomes global, a pandemic with potentially catastrophic consequences. A severe pandemic, which becomes Event 201, would require reliable cooperation among several industries, national governments, and key international institutions. It's funny, because if I was, in charge and I wanted to consolidate power, and I saw an interesting geopolitical event going on, and I maybe went there to see what was going on, if I were somebody who wanted to centralize these authorities all into one big group that is under control of the billionaires, wouldn't this be what you wanted to do? I'm not saying it happened. Obviously, it didn't happen. This is just crazy talk by conspiracy theorists. And as a matter of fact, it doesn't even have anything to do with what's going on now. This is just fiction, So let's continue. Is that really all they say about the scenario? No, here we go. Event 201 simulates an outbreak of a novel zoonotic coronavirus transmitted from bats to pigs to people that eventually becomes efficiently transmissible from person to person, leading to a severe pandemic. The pathogen and the disease it causes are modeled largely on SARS, but it's more transmissible in the community setting by people with mild symptoms. The disease starts from pig farms in Brazil, quietly and slowly at first, but then it started to spread more rapidly in healthcare settings. When it starts to spread efficiently from person to person in the low-income, densely packed neighborhoods of some of the megacities in South America, the epidemic explodes. It is further exported by air travel to Portugal, the United States, and China, and then to many other countries. Although at first some countries are able to control it, it continues to spread and be reintroduced, and eventually no country can maintain control. There's no possibility of a vaccine being available in the first year. There's a fictional antiviral drug that can help the sick but not significantly limit the spread of the disease. Since the whole human population is susceptible, during the initial months of the pandemic, the cumulative number of cases increases exponentially, doubling every week. And as the cases and deaths accumulate, the economic and societal consequences become increasingly severe. The scenario ends at the 18-month point, with 65 million deaths. The pandemic is beginning to slow due to decreasing number of susceptible people. The pandemic will continue at some rate until there's an effective vaccine or until 80 to 90% of the global population has been exposed. From that point on, it's likely to be an endemic childhood disease. Now, with all of this in mind, that before 9/11 there were exercises about hijackers taking over airplanes and flying them into buildings. That's funky, but has nothing to do with anything. Totally not connected. And then, Event 201. It was an idea where there was a coronavirus that spread from bats to people. Sure, there was pigs in the interim, and it was in Brazil in the scenario, but it was a coronavirus spread by bats to people and spread through airlines and all that kind of stuff. Now, remembering, just for the sake of it, I had to go on the Wayback Machine and find the actual documents. This is the script for the Dark Winter exercise. All of this is completely real. This isn't like some hit. They had deleted this, so I had to go to the Wayback Machine, but it isn't like it's way on the deep dark web or something that you have to find it. This is just, you just have to read. It was the script that, you know, talked about how exactly what happened. President Nunn's opening remarks about the disease, you know, governor's remarks, the governor of Oklahoma. All of this was all set out, and it's the same for all of these other scenarios. Now, an interesting thing happened recently. Bill Gates happened to go on an interview, and thinking of Dark Winter in mind, just keep thinking about this. Just take this and activate your almonds a little bit. Bill Gates has warned that governments must prepare for future pandemics and smallpox terror attacks by investing billions in research and development. Where would those billions go, Bill? Oh, well, Mr. Gates made the warning during a policy exchange interview with the chair of the Health Select Committee, Jeremy Hunt. The Microsoft founder also called for the formation of a new billion-dollar World Health Organization pandemic task force. I wonder who'd be in charge of that task force with those billions of dollars. While the research may be expensive, he said, while the research may be expensive, he said that it could also lead to other innovations such as eradicating flu and the common cold. He said that countries like the UK and US must spend tens of billions to fund the research. I'm hoping in 5 years I can write a book called We Are Ready for the Next Pandemic, but it takes tens of billions in R&D, and the US and UK will be part of that, he said. It'll take probably about $1 billion a year for a pandemic task force at the WHO level, which is doing the surveillance and actually doing what I call germ games, where you practice. Mr. Gates suggested that germ games could include preparing for acts of bioterrorism such as smallpox attacks on airports. That's pretty specific, Mr. Gates. But I'm just a guy. I mean, I'm just a regular guy. Now Bill Gates, he bought IBM for $50,000. I'm sorry, he bought MS-DOS for $50,000 and sold it to IBM for $1 per computer. So clearly, because of that making him billions of dollars, he's smart enough to know our health policies and exactly what we should do. So you should put him in charge of this billions of dollars task force. Clearly, our betters know better. You know, we gotta keep that in mind. So this is a little bit more specific even. You say, this is quoting Bill Gates, not me saying this, so don't come knocking on my door. You say, okay, what if a bioterrorist brought smallpox to 10 airports? You know, how would the world respond to that? There's naturally caused epidemics and bioterrorism caused epidemics that could even be way worse than what we experience today. So, I'm not trying to come to any crazy conclusions about this information, but there's a certain pattern here that we've got to suss out and not continue to pretend does not exist. There are firefighters, there's documented stories of firefighters who went out and started fires so that they could put them out, and then what happened? They, got rewarded, and they got all their accolades, they had all these medals, and maybe 20 or 30 years down into their career, people find out that they started thousands of house fires because they wanted the gold, or the benefit of being a hero. I'm not saying that that's what is going on here. I'm just saying that that is a thing. And along with that thing possibly influencing people's decisions, you've got to remember who exactly these people are. This is a beautiful, beautiful statue that nobody knows where the frick it came from. It has a bunch of it's kind of like a Ten Commandments thing. It's called the Georgia Guidestones, if you've never heard of them. I'm sure you have if you've gotten this far into the video, but if you haven't, the Georgia Guidestones, it was a granite monument erected in 1980 in Georgia in the United States. And it just kind of popped up in the middle of the night sometime. Nobody's 100% sure where it came from. Some people say it was Ted Turner. There's a lot of people who disagree with that. Either way, it was clearly made by somebody with a lot of money and a lot of power, and that's all you really need to know. Now, what is the inscription on this? What's the first inscription? Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. 500 million. That would be a pretty sharp number to get to. You'd have to get rid of mostly everybody. It's a very interesting thing, and I will probably go into it in a future video. Along with that, I mean, I know I probably will come across some atheist viewers, but just as an example of how weird things are getting in this clown world that we exist within, let's read this little bit of Revelation. It's 16:2, and let's go down to King James. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. Now this context is the first 6 bowls of wrath. So God got angry after people took the mark of the beast, and the angels started pouring out their bowls of wrath. And what happened to the people who had the mark of the beast? Well, they started developing really terrible sores and pustules all over their bodies. I'm just saying, smallpox, just look into what it does. On top of all of that, this is something I'm going to just touch on real quick because I won't be able to I'm going to do a video on it fairly soon. These billionaires, Bill Gates and specifically, is not able to go back to India right now. India's angry at him because, among other things, including vaccination programs that killed some kids, he helped set up what's called the Aadhaar system. The Aadhaar system in India is a system, well, here we go. Aadhaar is a 12-digit unique identity number that can be obtained voluntarily by the citizens of India and resident foreign nationals who have spent over 182 days and 12 months immediately preceding the date of application for enrollment, blah, blah, blah. What this is a digital identity. This is the way that people go and get their food stamps in India. The government is constantly able to track what you're doing and where you are and what you're buying and what stores you're going into because your digital identity follows you everywhere. It's like papers, please, but without having to carry any papers because it's attached to your fingerprints. So there's people who have died due to starvation because they normally get 20 kilograms of rice a month from the Indian government. And in this scenario, they are incapable of doing so because they're too old to figure out how their system works. They're denied their rations because they aren't going onto this system that is willing to track them everywhere they go. Now, you can say, oh, well, that's rice from the government. She's asking something for them, so she should do whatever they want. I personally think that's completely insane thinking, but some people are like that. Anyways, guys, I just, I'm not putting anything together here. This is not, my I don't have any conclusions to draw about this. I just wanted to point these little things out to you just to bring it all together into a neat little package. And you can feel free to do what you want with this information and feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I really need it. I'm just getting started here on YouTube, obviously. So the more people that like, the more people that send it to their friends. I know because of the content that I talk about, I'm never going to be boosted in the algorithm. And I've actually got a Rumble account because I don't expect YouTube to keep me allowing to do this once people start noticing that I'm here. But regardless, I would like as many people to see this as possible because the problem that we have in society right now is that me and you and everybody who's watching this will probably just go to work and come home and play video games and sleep in our bed and eat some dinner, go out to the store. While we have been living our lives like this, tending to our kids, whatever, reality has slowly been shifted around beneath us, and it's incremental. Like when your hair grows and you don't notice it when you're looking in the mirror every day, but if you see somebody that you hadn't seen in like 2 months, you'll be, wow, you have really long hair, even though you didn't notice it grow. It's the problem that we have is that the elites have decided all amongst themselves to create a society in which they can control everything and everyone down to their healthcare and finances and make everything equitable and everything gainful. If you are a very giving person, you could say that they're doing this for the hope that humanity will treat each other better. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but there are things that are happening that me and you need to pay attention to. The whole reason I started this YouTube channel was because I think I have a pretty good way of describing these kind of things to people who aren't necessarily engaged in politics at all. But it's coming to us now. It's coming to the regular retail workers and average Joe's blue-collar people of society. It's coming, and they've shifted reality under our feet for so long that we're no longer standing on solid ground, and we need to fight back in order to gain that solid ground back. You don't get out of this by complying with tyranny. You need to get your voice heard. Go buy this GoPro. It was a couple $100. I bought that. I stuck it up. I have some lights. Start talking. Tell people what's happening, and we must resist this to the strongest abilities that we have. If nothing else, please share this video. Please subscribe, and please let people know what's happening. If nobody else, your family. And anyways, so I got dinner ready. I'm going to have to run. Thanks for watching. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.